The soul doesn't fall for appearances, it falls for symbols. Let that one settle in your chest, my friends, because today we're not talking about surface charm, polished lines, or what kind of cologne he wears. We're diving deeper, past the muscles, the job title, the curated Instagram profile, straight into the part of a man he doesn't show to anyone, maybe not even to himself. But before we go there, do me a favor. Hit that like button, press subscribe, and don't do it for me. Do it for the part of you that's tired of small talk, tired of guessing games, tired of being told that your power comes from being nice or low maintenance. No! Your power comes from knowing what you awaken without even trying. And today we're unpacking that. Hey ladies, imagine this. You're standing in front of a man who seems completely put together, calm, confident, in control, like he's got the whole chessboard figured out. He talks smooth, pays for the dinner, cracks a joke at the waiter. He's been here before, right? He knows the script. And yet there's something in his eyes, still, distant, like a locked room inside him that nobody's ever entered, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't know it existed. And then you walk in, not with heels or lipstick, but with presence, stillness. You smile like you've got a secret, and suddenly he's not in control anymore. He's aware. Something ancient stirs, a subtle ripple. And no, it wasn't the way you laughed or tossed your hair. It was something quieter, something he felt. He doesn't know it yet, but you just became a mirror, not of who he is, but of who he forgot he was. Because here's the truth, my friends. The modern man has been trained to conquer everything except himself. He knows how to fix the car, pitch the idea, run the numbers, but ask him to sit with his soul, silence, because most of what he's learned about masculinity is armor. And when you show up without trying to fix him, without needing anything, just being who you are, that armor gets heavy. And let's be honest, he's confused by it. See, he's used to women who chase, who prove, who perform, but you bring a different energy. You don't need him to choose you. You already chose you. And that's the moment his soul feels something unfamiliar, the recognition. Carl Jung said, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. Well, guess what? When a man resists that feeling you stir in him, when he pulls back, retreats into logic, or disappears altogether, it's not because you did anything wrong, it's because something in you reached a part of him he didn't know was still alive. And when that part wakes up, it doesn't ask for permission. You ever notice how the women who don't chase, who don't force, who simply exist with clarity and calm are the ones men can't forget? That's not witchcraft, my friends. That's wisdom. That's symbolic presence. She didn't say much. She didn't have to, because her presence felt like home, like something he's been missing but couldn't name. So if you've ever been told you were too intense, too deep, or too hard to read, this one's for you. You were never too much. You were a mirror. And the people who couldn't handle it, they weren't ready to see themselves. Stay with me, because in this journey, we're not learning how to get a man. We're remembering how to be the woman who reflects him back to his soul. And trust me, when you walk through the world like that, you don't just attract love, you become unforgettable. Hit that like button, subscribe if this already hit something deeper, and stay with me, because we're just getting started. Number one, the symbol that breaks through. The soul doesn't fall for the obvious, it falls for the symbol. That one, it doesn't just sting, it slices through the noise, because in a world obsessed with surface, the soul is quietly starving for depth. It's not looking for perfection. It's not chasing the girl who gets the most likes or wears the trendiest shade of lipstick. No, my friends, the soul is after something far more rare, a symbol. And that's what you are when you stop performing and start remembering. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a man walking through a gallery filled with beautiful portraits. Every face is flawless, every pose practiced, every smile rehearsed. He walks by them, nods, maybe pauses, but then he turns a corner and sees one painting that isn't flashy. It's worn, simple, quiet, but he stops. Something about it feels familiar. It doesn't try to impress. It invites. It doesn't demand attention. It holds it. That's you. You're not the canvas everyone studies. You're the one that studies them back. Now you might be wondering, what does it even mean to be a symbol? Does it mean you need to act mysterious, say less, be aloof? No, being a symbol doesn't mean being hard to reach. It means being impossible to replace. It means You're not trying to be anything because you already are something, a symbol of truth, of peace, of emotional safety, of the thing he didn't know he was aching for until he felt it in your presence. That's why he remembers you. Not because you texted him first, not because you wore that dress, not because you played the game better than anyone else, but because of the energy you carried when you left the room. Because here's the hard truth, my friends. Most people are chasing attention, but they're missing impact. Most women are trying to be unforgettable by being louder, prettier, sexier. But the soul doesn't respond to volume. It responds to vibration. And that's why he can't forget you. He may not even understand it. He might even pull away from it. But somewhere deep in his subconscious, you didn't just pass through his life. You shifted something in it. You see, the masculine doesn't fall in love with performance. He falls in love with what you symbolize. Peace in a storm, depth in a shallow world, truth in a sea of performances. Have you ever had someone look at you like they recognized something but couldn't explain it? Have you felt someone be quiet around you, not because they weren't interested, but because they were stirred? That's not flirtation. That's symbolism. You didn't become a memory. You became a mirror. And Carl Jung once said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That's what your presence does. It transforms. And the thing about transformation, it doesn't always feel good in the moment, especially for the masculine. He wasn't trained to feel. He was trained to perform, to achieve, to move forward, not inward. So when he meets a woman who doesn't try to fix, perform, or impress, but simply is, he doesn't just see her. He sees the part of himself he's been avoiding. And yes, maybe he pulls away, maybe he runs, maybe he ghosts, but that doesn't mean he didn't feel something. It means he felt too much. And that feeling, it wasn't desire, it was recognition. He didn't just see a woman, he saw meaning. And meaning lingers. So don't underestimate your impact just because he didn't say the right thing or give you a neat ending. Some echoes aren't loud, they're eternal. And you weren't supposed to be a chapter, you were the theme. Stay with me, because next we're going even deeper into what happens when a man feels something he can't control, and why that's exactly when the game changes. And make sure you've hit that like button, subscribe to stay grounded in this energy, because we're not here to chase, we're here to awaken. Number 2, the wall inside a man. Most men aren't cold, they're armored. Let that hit for a second, my friends, because what you've been calling emotionally unavailable might not be disinterest at all. It might be a man wrapped in survival mode. See, the world doesn't teach men how to feel. It teaches them how to function. From a young age, they're taught to hold it in, man up, stay strong, keep moving. Vulnerability, that's a threat. Emotion, that's weakness. So what do? They build walls. With logic, with sarcasm, with silence. They create a version of themselves that can't be hurt, but also can't be seen. And then you show up, not as a problem to fix, not as a game to win, just as yourself, soft but grounded, still but powerful. And without warning, his armor starts to feel heavy, not because you attacked it, but because your presence reminds him what it's costing him to carry it. That's why he might seem off when things get real. Not because he doesn't care, but because care itself is unfamiliar. It's like giving water to someone who's lived in a desert. It should be a gift, but it can feel like drowning. He's not pushing you away. He's pushing away the feeling of being unarmored. Have you ever seen a man get distant right after opening up? One moment he's letting you in, and the next he's gone. You replay everything, wondering what you did wrong, but maybe, just maybe, what scared him wasn't your presence. It was the part of himself he met in it. Because when you carry calm energy, when you meet him without demand, without performance, you reflect him back to himself. Not the version he shows the world, but the version he forgot he needed. And that's terrifying, because dropping the wall doesn't just reveal his feelings, it reveals his fears, his doubts, his buried beliefs that say, if I open up, I'll be left. If I show emotion, I'll lose control. But here's the shift. The woman who doesn't try to fix him helps him heal, not through pressure, not through lectures, just by being a safe place in a loud world. Stay with me. Because next we're going to talk about what happens when he actually feels something real, and why his first instinct might be to run, even when it's exactly what he's always needed. Number 3, why he pulls away from what he feels. You touched something he didn't know he'd hidden. And my friends, that kind of touch, that doesn't fade, that doesn't get replaced, that stays long after the moment ends. Let's get one thing straight. When a man pulls away after something real, it is not rejection. It's a reaction to being seen in a way he didn't expect, didn't plan for, and certainly didn't feel ready for. Because what you activated in him wasn't desire, it was memory, emotion, a buried self he thought he locked away for good. Your presence didn't poke at his ego, it poked at his pain. And pain, my friends, is a place most men don't know how to sit in. Because when you stirred something, when he felt peace, clarity, or emotional safety, his mind didn't say, this is love. His mind said, this is unfamiliar. Unfamiliar isn't safe. So what does he do? He backs up, disengages, ghosts, not because you were too much, but because you reminded him of what he buried. Maybe you saw his worth before he did. Maybe you held space instead of pushing him. Maybe your silence was the first time he felt truly witnessed. And that triggered every lie he's carried since boyhood. I'm not enough. If I open up, they'll leave. If I care, I'll lose control. If they see the real me, they'll walk away. But you didn't walk, you didn't pressure, you simply stayed present. And ironically, that's what scared him most, because he couldn't rationalize your calm, couldn't manipulate your peace, couldn't box your energy into something convenient. And so he runs, but don't be fooled. He's not running from you, he's running from himself. But here's the part he didn't expect. Even in your absence, you remain. He doesn't remember your laugh. He remembers your stillness. He doesn't remember your words. He remembers your energy. The feeling of being seen, not judged, of being felt, not fixed. And that kind of memory, it doesn't vanish. It lingers. It echoes in quiet moments. It shows up in silence, in still hours, in the pauses between distractions. Stay with me, because next we're going to unpack what the feminine truly represents inside the male soul, and why when she shows up in real form, she doesn't just attract him, she awakens him. Number 4, the anima, his inner feminine. In every man lives a woman. Now that might sound poetic, even strange, but my friends, it's one of the most profound truths a man will ever face. Because buried beneath all that masculinity, that drive, that structure and strength is his anima, his inner feminine, his softness, his vulnerability, his intuition. The part of him he was taught to suppress just to survive in a world that told him tough was the only safe option. And then she appears, not as a threat, not as temptation, but as a mirror, a quiet reminder of the part of himself he left behind. You see, she doesn't just spark desire. She doesn't just make his heart race. She makes his soul stir. She doesn't say, you need me. Her energy says, you've forgotten you. And that right there, that's the shift. She becomes more than a woman. She becomes a symbol of his wholeness. When she enters his life, she doesn't demand access to his world. She simply exists with such deep alignment, such natural stillness, that he begins to question the armor he's been wearing, the distractions he's been chasing, the roles he's been performing. And maybe he doesn't know what's happening. Maybe he resists it. But at some level, he knows. He knows she isn't like the others. Not because she's louder or cooler or sexier, but because her presence speaks to something inside him that's been mute for years. That's the anima. She's not there to be possessed. She's there to awaken and not to fix him, not to complete him, but to remind him that he was never broken, only disconnected. And that's why he can't forget her. Not because she made promises, but because she made him remember. Remember the man he could become if he allowed himself to soften. Remember the peace he could feel if he stopped trying to dominate everything. Remember the depth he could reach if he trusted something beyond logic. She was never just a moment. She was a message, and some messages echo for a lifetime. Stay with me, because next we're diving into what happens when her truth shakes something so deep, so hidden, that his first response is confusion, but his soul knows. Number 5, the shadow she unlocked. We are not what we show, but what we repress. Let that sink in, my friends, because what haunts a man isn't the woman who chased him or complimented him or begged him to stay. It's the one who didn't, the one who saw through him and said nothing, the one whose silence echoed louder than any speech, the one whose very presence made his performance feel hollow. He wasn't haunted by her body. He was haunted by the truth she reflected. She didn't argue. She didn't force. She didn't beg for his time or prove her worth. She simply was calm, collected, rooted. And in that energy, she became a mirror, not to his image, but to his unacknowledged self. That's why her energy shook him, because while most women tried to connect with his charm, she connected with his shadow, the part of him he spent years hiding beneath achievements, distractions, and detachment. The shadow is where we bury what we're ashamed of. For men, it's where vulnerability, fear, insecurity, and unmet needs go to sleep. But the thing about the shadow, it doesn't die. It waits for a moment, for a person, for a mirror. And when she showed up unmoved by ego, untouched by the need to be chosen, she became that mirror. That's when the unraveling began. He felt exposed, not because she tried to analyze him, but because she didn't. She didn't try to fix him or reach into his darkness. She just let it be seen. And that visibility, that truth, it was more intimate than touch. He didn't know what to do with it, because you can't run from something when it lives inside you. And now that she had awakened it, he could no longer pretend it wasn't there. So he might have run, not from her, but from the door she opened. And yet, once the door is opened, it never really shuts again, because now, in her absence, he's not haunted by missing a woman. He's haunted by missing himself, the self he briefly glimpsed in her presence. Stay with me, because next we're stepping into what happens after he runs. The obsession that follows, it not with her, but with the feeling she left behind. Number 6, the obsession isn't her, it's what she represented. He's not looking for her. He's looking for the version of himself that only existed with her. Let that hit, my friends, because this isn't the kind of obsession you hear about in love songs or see in rom-coms. This isn't about missing her scent or replaying the way she laughed. No, this is deeper. This is soul-level memory. Because when she walked away, she didn't just leave a space in his life. She left a space inside him. A version of himself he never knew existed until she showed up and reflected it back to him. That's what he's searching for. Not her body, not her voice, not her social media updates. He's searching for the feeling of himself in her presence. Because with her, he didn't have to be impressive. He could just be real. With her, he remembered the softness he buried, the curiosity he silenced, the dreams he edited to make room for what the world expected from him. She didn't flatter him. She didn't stroke his ego. She mirrored him. She looked at him and didn't see a project or a paycheck or a polished exterior. She saw the boy under the armor, the man behind the mask, the soul behind the performance. And that kind of gaze, you can't forget it. Because it's not attraction, it's recognition. And recognition, my friends, it is rare. It's why he can't replace her. It's why the next woman might check all the boxes but still feel like a stranger, because the connection wasn't built on chemistry, it was built on truth. The truth of what she represented: peace, depth, permission to feel, a reminder that he's more than what he produces or protects, that even in his silence he is seen. And maybe he couldn't stay in that energy. Maybe it scared him. Maybe it felt too vulnerable, too raw, so he left. But now he's chasing something he can't name, because it's not a woman, it's a version of himself. One he liked more, one that felt freer, one that didn't have to perform to feel worthy. That's why it lingers. Stay with me, because next we're going into the moment she leaves, not in anger, not in pain, but in self-respect, and how that quiet exit changed him more than any "I love you" ever could. Number 7, her power was in her departure. Real feminine energy doesn't beg, it blesses, then leaves. Read that again, my friends, slowly. Because in a world that teaches women to chase, to fix, to prove, they forget the sacred power of their departure. Not the kind filled with slamming doors or long speeches. No, the kind that's quiet, rooted, graceful. The kind that doesn't burn bridges, but leaves echoes. She didn't walk away to punish him. She walked away to protect her essence, because she could feel it, his hesitation, his fear, his pullback. And instead of clinging, instead of twisting herself into smaller and smaller shapes just to make him comfortable, she chose herself, not out of pride, out of presence, because true feminine energy doesn't scream, "Look at me." It whispers, "I see me." Her leaving wasn't a collapse, it was a ceremony. The final blessing of, "Here's your mirror, whether you choose to look or not, is no longer mine to manage." And that's when she became unforgettable. Not because she made a scene, but because she didn't. Because she left with the same peace she entered with. And that peace, it did more damage to his ego than 1,000 words ever could. She didn't plead. She didn't question her worth. She didn't circle back just to see if maybe he'd changed. She trusted the echo because her energy had already done its work, and she didn't break him. She broke his pattern. The cycle of I push, she chases. The dynamic of I run, she waits, gone. Now it's just him, alone with the silence she left behind, one that feels less like punishment and more like a mirror he can't stop looking into. He thought she'd wait. She didn't. He thought he had time, and he didn't. And now her absence has more presence than any woman currently in his life. That, my friends, is power, the kind that doesn't come from control, but from clarity. Stay with me, because next we're diving into what happens when that silence starts to work on him, when the obsession sets in, not with her body or her attention, but with the energy she embodied. Number 8, the awakening of the masculine soul. And what we deny becomes our destiny. And my friends, that's the truth most men don't face until it's too late. See, when she entered his life, he didn't recognize her as a lesson. He saw her as a moment, something rare, maybe intriguing, maybe beautiful, but not something that would rearrange his soul. But she did, because her presence wasn't just comfort, it was confrontation. She didn't show him a fantasy. She showed him a reflection, a brief, brilliant glimpse of the man he could be if he chose to grow, if he chose to feel, if he chose to evolve. And that's what terrified him, because transformation, that's not easy, that's not flattering, that's not soft music and candlelight, that's shadow work, that's waking up in the middle of the night, not because you miss her body, but because you miss who you were when she saw you. She wasn't meant to stay, she was meant to awaken, and that awakening isn't romantic, it's spiritual. It shakes the foundation he built his identity on. She didn't just inspire him, she disrupted him. Her silence forced him to hear his own noise. Her stillness forced him to notice his chaos. And the choice was his. Grow or search. If he chooses growth, he starts to reclaim what he lost, the vulnerability, the truth, the self-worth he buried under the mask of control. He becomes the man she once reflected back to him, not for her, but because of her. But if he avoids the work, if he keeps running, blaming, numbing, he spends the rest of his life trying to find her in other women, and he won't. Because she wasn't just a person, she was a portal, a once-in-a-lifetime mirror into his potential. And here's the catch. You can't recreate energy that was never based on effort. You can't manufacture connection that came from soul recognition. She wasn't the prize, and she was the invitation to heal, to evolve, to become. So if he doesn't do the work, he won't just lose her, he'll lose himself. So here's where it all comes together, my friends. She wasn't just a chapter, she was the awakening, the mirror, the message, the moment his soul could no longer ignore. Whether he grows or stays the same, one thing is certain: he will never unfeel her presence. And maybe you were that woman, or maybe you're becoming her. If this spoke to something deep in you, like the video, subscribe for more soul-level truth, and share this with someone who needs the reminder, because healing starts with awareness. And awareness always arrives right on time. Stay grounded, stay glowing.